Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're sort of delving back into another themed episode, and we're trying to take as many sort of big hitters off our bucket list. You know, we've covered Back to the Future before, we've done Star Wars, and yeah, we're sort of trying to get sort of the big blockbuster movies or just important movies in general off that list. So I'm just going to pass over to my best pal here. He's going to explain what movies we're talking about today because it's going to be a good one. I think I'm really excited for this one.
Yes. So as you said, we've done some big hitters recently, and now for one of the best, one of the highest regarded franchises, which is Jurassic Park, a franchise
Absolutely.
which I hadn't dipped my toe into until last year, where I had the chance to actually see the first film in the cinema.
Oh.
Uh, I believe that you've seen Jurassic World. Had you partaken of any of the original trilogy?
No, mate, this was my first viewing of all of the original trilogy. But I think Jurassic World, we'll get into that, I suppose, sometime soon. But like it sort of served as like a good sort of reboot somewhat. So I was sort of good for me to delve in there. But no, I haven't seen these. How was the cinema experience though? Was that like a QFT thing?
Yeah, so I went to the Queen's Film Theatre, and it's probably one of the best film experiences I've ever had.
Oh, that's great, man.
And then afterwards, we were given a really nice poster, which I still have, and it was amazing, and it shot instantly into the top 10 favorite films.
Really?
Uh,
Oh, that's
I,
great,
I
man.
don't
I'm
I don't think
super
any film, no
boss.
no film has broken the top 10 that quickly,
Oh man.
aside from The Graduate, probably.
Oh, I'm excited, man. I'm really excited for this one. But yeah, as Callum said, it's Jurassic Park trilogy, so one, two, and three there. And yeah, thank you to everyone who has recently supported us. Everyone who's liked, commented, shared, subscribed, all that good stuff. And if you want to check out our latest Disney podcast, we recently started a new Disney saga. There's a new Disney playlist as well in the playlist section, so go check that out if you haven't already seen it. And yeah, shall we hop in with our first film then, buddy?
Indeed.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, yeah, as you said, this is your first sort of well, is your first experience with this was with a cinema experience, and like, do you think that did it hold up for you in terms of like modern cinema? Because the way it's shot and stuff, it's probably a little bit different to what we're used to. But how did it hold up in the cinema? How did it look on the big screen?
Oh, it still looked spectacular. I mean, I would say every single aspect of this film is equal to a modern film
Hmm.
aside from some of the effects, but I mean, they don't have to look good to earn your respect. And
That's
I
a good
definitely
point.
think seeing it in the cinema it was a weird experience where it gave me like retroactive nostalgia because it made me feel as though I had seen it when it came out.
Yeah.
So I sort of have like the memory of seeing it
Oh, that's great,
like
man.
as though when it was first released. So it was sort of a weird film experience. How did you fare with this film?
Man, like this is this is just such a special film because I think even up to today in 2020, I think this is still some of the best, if not the best, use of practical effects I've certainly ever seen in a film. The dinosaurs just look so amazing here, and with that, the cast is so good, the score so good. And one thing I love about this film in particular is how it fits into so many different genres. It can fit into action, sci-fi, thriller, and I think there's definitely horror undertones in there as well. Especially with all the Velociraptor scenes, pretty much like they're all really thrilling. And I mean, yeah, this movie is so good, man, so good.
I do feel like this might be a briefer episode, just because I feel like the first, second, and third film are exceptionally similar. So I feel
Yeah,
like aside from very plot specific points, it's a given that the score is spectacular,
yeah,
the
exactly.
effects are revolutionary. It's gonna be the same for all three films. So if you want to get to into sort of the plot of the film,
Let's do it, man.
I
Let's
know
do
you
it.
love a good film death, and
Love it.
they get
Love
right
it.
into the action with someone getting absolutely chewed up, and I,
Love
I
that.
imagine you did love it, yeah.
I did like it, and the thing about these films, if we're talking like broadly as well, is it sort of paints out the dinosaurs as like the villains of the film. But for me, I don't know. Like it's not that I love human death. That's not what it is. Although listeners of the podcast may disagree with that. It's just the fact that it is the animal kingdom at the end of the day. Like if dinosaurs existed today, they would probably be above humans in the food chain. So I think it's sort of it's realistic in that sense. And these films are very brutal as well. It's probably as brutal as they can be with is it a PG? Yeah, PG rating. So it's remarkable, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is some complexity as to who the villain, who the true villain of the film is, and it was sort of weird to hear in, say, the third Jurassic Park film, where Sam Neill, Alan Grant refers to them as like genetically engineered monsters, but
Mhm.
really the monsters are the people who decided to create them.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
I assume that the film definitely recognizes that irony, but it seemed odd to me that Alan Grant wasn't self-aware enough to realize that.
Yeah, and Alan Grant is one of my favorites in these, well, in the two films that he's in. But and I suppose if we're going to talk about characters as well, Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm is, I heard a lot about Jeff Goldblum in these films. Like you hear about his iconic performance, but this is one of the greatest. I think like it's so iconic, and I think his line delivery is second to none. I think it's remarkable.
Yes, life. Ah, find the way. It is some of the most spectacular acting, and even like how the film doesn't even play up the scene where he's sort of like like Burt Reynolds, like half shirtless. Like that has become one of the biggest memes of the last few years, and the film doesn't even pay attention to that. Like someone just decided to frame it like that, and then just pan away as though it wasn't a moment to be sort of like a moment to be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. But like I said, I'm just happy to go by your notes, buddy, in the chronologically in the film if that suits you.
Well, just to sort of talk conceptually about dinosaurs, because I know that you're a fan.
Absolutely.
You said that you sort of let's talk a little bit about your history with dinosaurs. You said the other day on the podcast that you sort of like them even at the age of say 14 or 15.
Yeah, man, I went through a huge dinosaur phase back then. And we haven't really covered dinosaur films in the podcast apart from like The Good Dinosaur, which we spoke about. But I don't know, I just there's something about them I just love. I always used to watch the Walking with Dinosaurs BBC documentaries, the Planet Dinosaur BBC documentaries, and I don't know, I think it's so interesting as well. And especially these films, like as I said, first time viewing of them, and if I think if I saw these 5 or 6 years ago, I would have just completely loved them and adored them as I do now. So I'm a big fan. What about you? Are you as much of a fan? Like, do you appreciate dinosaurs?
I've never been a fan of dinosaurs, which is why I have quite a critical point to say.
Go for it, man.
I may be ignorant in saying this, but who cares? Not to diss the paleontologists, but what does learning about dinosaurs teach us? And
Okay.
this is a serious question because I'm not I'm not using that as a criticism. It's a genuine question because sort of recent history, we learn about that in order to not repeat those mistakes. But I'm just wondering what sort of uh
Yeah.
what like dinosaur history that far back, what does that actually teach us? What do we have to gain or to learn from that
It's a great
research?
point, man. It's a really great point, and like you said, sort of modern history, we can learn about our mistakes. A perfect example of that is the world wars, for example, and how that's impacted the world. But going back millions of years ago to dinosaurs, there was no society back then for us to compare ours to. So it was just, I suppose, in many ways, that was just the animal kingdom, plain and simple. Like that was it. The food chain.
Yeah,
Dinosaurs are the top of that. So, but apart from that, there's nothing more to compare it to really, apart from maybe other animals. You hear people say dinosaurs are related to, or sorry, birds are related to dinosaurs, and maybe that's as far as the research will go. But I don't know, like it's a weird one because, like, to my knowledge, like courses in university like archaeology and paleontology, I think they're still pretty popular, to be honest, aren't they?
yeah, they are. I mean, I suppose it's just to sort of answer the curiosity of what did they look like, how did they act. But
Hmm.
beyond that, I'm surprised so many people are dedicated to the field because at
Yeah,
this point,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
probably not going to discover a new dinosaur. So
A good point.
what ground is there to uh, you know, like what like
I know what you
man,
mean, man. I know, I
yeah
100% know what you mean, because apart from you, like you said perfectly, Callum, like apart from the human curiosity, there's not much there. There's not much sort of body of information there that we can catalog and sort of analyze, because, like we said, like these are an extinct species. So it's sort of like a similar vein to like looking back at Neanderthals and stuff. Like apart from comparing them to ourselves, you know, physically and how they lived, there's not much you can do with it, really, is there? But I don't, maybe it's just something about dinosaurs, man, because they're. I mean, they look cool, and you know, always when I went to a museum, I don't know about you, but like the dinosaur skeletons were always my go-to, my favorite piece of the museum. And what about you?
Yeah, I suppose because our local one would be the Ulster Museum, and it's
Yeah,
pretty much, do you want to see a mummy or do you want to see some dinosaurs? And
yeah.
you're like, the mummy's a bit shit, so I mean, yeah, may as well.
Absolutely,
It's free, so I
absolutely.
mean,
Yeah,
can't
that's
complain.
true, true. Yeah, man. But yeah, like you sort of hinted at, like I actually really appreciate the scientific realism in this film. You know, the dinosaur blood from mosquitoes trapped in tree sap. I think that it sort of sounds like the sort of thing that probably could happen, and you know, to be honest, and I thought that was really great.
Yeah, it had extensive believability, and sort of your interest in dinosaurs and my lack of interest in dinosaurs made me wonder, like, would you want to visit Jurassic Park? Like, is this a venture that you would actually have been interested in?
It's a really interesting. That's a really interesting point, Callum, because there is a lot of I suppose moral questions surrounding Jurassic Park. Like, you know, technically, like they're not naturally bred dinosaurs, so it's not. It would be very different to seeing them in the wild, and also, you know, it's sort of the film sort of acknowledges that, like, it's sort of humans playing God in many sense, like recreating history, and that. But like putting that all that aside, I would definitely love to go and see it. But when you sort of think about the moral implications of it, you think it is a bit not corrupt, but it's a bit like wrong in a sense. You know, it's not something that I would, you know, like to see if it could happen today. But regarding that, sorry, you know, sort of leaving that to aside, it would be a cool spectacle. What about you, mate? What about you?
Yeah, even sort of setting aside the safety concerns and the moral complexity, as you said, I still just don't think I'd care. You know,
Yeah,
like
no,
there's a
fair
lot of
enough, man.
things
Fair
that
enough.
that happen in the world that, you know, seem interesting to some people, you know, that are huge attractions, and I'm just like, I could not give a shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I get
I
you.
suppose obviously we never actually see, you know, John Hammond's full vision realized, because he also intends on building, you know, a theme park with actual rides rather than it just being, you know,
Yeah,
like a big zoo on an island. So maybe if there were, uh, you know, a bunch of other attractions, and also, you know, huge safety precautions for the animals. But
mhm.
also then, yeah, that leads into the same the moral corruption of zoos. You know, where
Yeah,
you're taking, well, I mean, it is sort of a different issue, as you said, because they're genetically bred. You know, they never were in the wild, so you're not taking them out and putting them in captivity. But also raising something in captivity is, you know, it's as bad, because then you're
yeah.
never letting it be free and, you know, adhere to the natural
It's a great
order.
point, man. It's a really great point. I agree with everything you said, man. And we've talked about zoos in the podcast before, I think, and it's a sort of another one where, you know, in like 10 or 15 years time, you can sort of imagine the zoos definitely becoming less popular, or certainly a lot more of them either closing down or something like that. Because you know, I don't know whether to say zoos are like a dying breed necessarily, but I don't think there is, you know, warmly accepted now.
Yeah, no, I think uh, with social media and, you know, a lot of coverage being given to animal cruelty, you know,
Hmm.
in factories, in zoos, and then obviously Tiger King was a huge thing that
Oh
swept
yeah,
the
big
nations.
time, man.
So, you know, I hate to keep referencing that, because it's also, you know, a documentary about a bad person, but it's a well-made
I get you. No,
documentary
I get you, man.
that we have to respect. So yeah, I think that has opened some people's eyes, and I don't think I'd be visiting a zoo again. You know, I had issues before, say Tiger King, but that sort of opened discussions, which also made me, you know, see the moral ramifications a bit further.
I love that, man. Yeah, completely, and it's definitely something that I would reconsider as well. But I suppose like in the country we live in, like we only have one zoo, so it's not as if it's like loads of options for us. But you know, I can even see our zoo sort of probably not close down in the next few years, but certainly become less culturally accepted and ingrained in our culture, because Yeah, like we've mentioned it loads of times in the podcast. Like there are a lot of sort of moral complexities with it, and it sort of fits in well. Like with this film, sort of this film's very ahead of its time, both effects wise and like in the issues and the moral questions it presents. So I've massive respect for Steven Spielberg for this. I think it's one of his best that I've certainly seen.
Yeah, definitely. So we're introduced to Alan Grant and Ellie Statler, and they find out that their dig has been funded by John Hammond this entire time because clearly he has a vested interest in the history of dinosaurs.
Sure.
And he tells them that if they come to his island, that he'll continue to fund their dig by a further 3 years. It's really not worth it. Like, don't pretend that you're doing them a favor by that.
Yeah.
But it seems like very consistent in these films that it seems that an archaeological dig is incredibly expensive, and I'm just wondering where the expenses are going to,
It's a great
because
point.
they
It's a
have
great
they
point.
have the they have the imaging technology already. The a lot of paleontologists, I'm sure, would work for less money because they have that intense curiosity and thirst for knowledge. So I don't really know where the funds are going.
It's a great point. Yeah, because yeah, it's a like I'm probably very ignorant to paleontology because I don't know a lot about it. But for me, apart from the technology, all you need would be like a brush, and then like, do you know what I mean? It's not like the most
Yeah.
it's not the most high tech uh sort of industry, but I can get I'd imagine the equipment's quite expensive and stuff. But no, you're right. Like how much money is Alan Grant needing and stuff for this? Like must be a
Because
very
it does
expensive
seem like
operation.
like scientists are always desperate for funding,
Yeah,
and you can't understand that when they're developing vaccines or medications. But
absolutely.
yeah, I'm sure it is just a lack of understanding on our part as to where the money's going. But I'd be interested if anyone knows the answer to
Yeah.
that to leave it below, because we'd be very interested to hear.
We have a mutual friend who is interested in paleontology at university as well.
Which one?
Max. I think he's going to do
Oh, is
paleontology.
he?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
lovely.
yeah. Good
I
on
didn't
him.
know whether he was going to pursue that or geography.
I think it's that. Maybe I've just made that up. I probably just made that up. But
No, I
I
think he has had an interest. I just forgot about that.
good on him. Like good on him. But yeah, no. As you said, like, um, yeah. If anyone knows anything about the industry, comment in the comment section down below. We'd be very interested to hear.
Yes. So Matthew, we talk a lot about corporate corruption, corporate greed,
We
corporate
do.
espionage,
We do.
and that's rife here as well. Uh, and that is seen most in the character of Dennis, who is hired to steal samples of embryos of dinosaurs from the island. And I get that your corporate espionage target, the person that you have committed for you, they need to be dumb enough that you can manipulate them. But this dude's a fucking mess. Like he
Yeah.
like this dude is, you know, it's shocking, and a lot of people like a lot of people like this do exist. Geniuses that are just unbelievably dumb. Like this guy who is, probably one of the most skilled hackers and software technicians that I've ever seen in a
Absolutely.
film. And then he's just inept at literally anything else, like inept at being a human being.
Where's my
It's just
glasses?
shocking. It's baffling, Matthew. Like, that
It is
I
kind
feel like if they had hired Samuel L. Jackson's character to do the corporate espionage, they probably would have been in a much better
oh
position,
yeah,
and they probably would have actually got their samples.
because he knows what he's doing. Samuel Jackson's character, he knows what he's doing. And you know what? I actually didn't realize Samuel Jackson was in this film. I just completely lost my shit when I saw it. 'Cause I wasn't aware. I did not know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching this with my brother, and we got to like Samuel L. Jackson's third scene, and he asks me whether that was him, and he just had not realized it was him
Yeah,
because
I,
uh,
I
I
completely
think I think
dismissed
because
it.
my brother thought that this film came out in the late 70s or like early 80s, and then I told him it came out in 1993, and he was sort of taken aback. So
Yeah,
this was probably Samuel L. Jackson's like biggest role before Pulp Fiction. Like I think
yeah.
this was probably a huge break for him.
Yeah, and I'm completely the same as your brother. I thought this film was like in the 80s, but when you think about it, the third film came out in 2001. Like that's reasonably close to like, well, I mean, it's very close to the year we were born in. So like it's I didn't realize it was that modern because I thought it was like, yeah, sort of 80s, Back to the Future sort of time, but no.
Yeah, so that was sort of why I was surprised that, there was such an excitement for Jurassic World, because it wasn't exactly like Star Wars where they left it, like I get that, the prequels ended around that same time.
True.
Uh, but the original trilogy, the sequel trilogy is a sequel to the original trilogy, which was like over 30 years ago. So people had built suspense to see like the original characters once again.
Hmm.
So I sort of get that level of excitement for that film. But then Jurassic World came out in the same year, and I feel like there was nearly a matched level of excitement from a lot of fans, I thought.
Yeah, yeah. Jurassic World did really well, I think, didn't it? It got over 1 billion at the box office, so and it warranted its own trilogy as well. So good on this franchise. It seems like it's still going strong.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Jurassic World or Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, but I hear there's some ill opinions of the sequel at least.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard the same, man. I've heard the same. Like it's Jurassic World, but we'll talk about it sometime. But I'm a big fan of that film, and it's sort of like as I said, it's a good reboot. So I think you would like it, man.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to Jurassic World Dominion, because we'll finally see for the first time since 1993 the reunited trinity of Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum.
Absolutely, that'll be great, man. That'll be great. And we'll talk about the characters and their absences in some films later on, but yeah, it's sort of a thing that has been missing throughout the franchise. I think like the magic of the first film, really. So when the magic dynamic of the three. So yeah, it is really great in this.
Yeah, definitely. So the characters were flown to the island, and they finally encountered the dinosaurs for the first time with the incredible swell of music from the beautiful score. And
Absolutely.
Alan Grant is astounded to see, all of these dinosaurs, and it's his dream come true to see them in real life. And he sees some dinosaurs moving together, and he announces they do move in herds. And that just made me think that no behavior of these dinosaurs is proof of how real dinosaurs acted,
Yeah, it's a
because
great
they're
point.
only genetic approximations, but that they have completely different cultural surroundings and engineered genetics.
Yeah,
So
they're all
you
female, aren't
can't you
they?
can't
So
use yeah, and he sort of admits this in the third film, but in the first film, he witnesses a lot of things and then says, oh, and that confirms my theory, and I'm like, it does not.
it doesn't. Yeah,
All
yeah,
all of this is,
yeah.
completely inaccurate to the real dinosaur experience.
Yeah, that's like in a similar sense. It's sort of like an animal expert going into the zoo, say into the gym, into the zoo, and like seeing sort of a couple giraffes feed, and then saying like, so they do eat apples then, but then it's just like in the environment in which they live in, isn't it? So they're of course they're going to behave differently, like you said.
Yeah. So really, what we're saying is he's a fucking fool. Let's be honest.
It's
Uh,
I really like Alan as well. He's very brutal to the kid. In the start of the film where he describes to the kid how the velociraptor.
yeah. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah, I cannot hear you whatsoever. You haven't accidentally muted yourself, have you?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right, I think my mic had like cut out for a second. Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. But
Yeah, so you mentioned the kid that he tells about the Velociraptor. Have you heard the theory that that is actually Owen Grady from Jurassic World? That's
no,
Chris
I
Pratt's
would love
character.
that. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean that would sort of be a retcon to the level of like the kid in Iron Man 2 actually being revealed to be Peter Parker, and
Yeah.
them just retroactively confirming that. And I think that would add real depth, and sort of give legitimacy to the first Jurassic World film, because it sort of had no real crossover
Hmm.
characters, did it?
No, not to my knowledge, man. Not to my knowledge. It's been a while since I've seen it, but like, yeah, I would have loved that, like a retroactive sort of retcon. Yeah, that would have been great, man.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt has said he loves that idea, so I genuinely I think that they may confirm that in the third film.
I hope so, man. I really do hope so.
Yeah, and sort of, I also agree with you. I love how much he hates kids in the beginning.
Yeah.
When Timmy is just telling him about how much he loved his book, and he's sort of like going in and out of cars,
Yeah.
and leaving one and entering another. That's so fun to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Go ahead,
yeah,
man.
go ahead.
Oh no, I love how he develops into somewhat of a father figure for the children. I thought that was really great character development. Like he is a nice guy. He really is a nice guy.
Yeah, I really felt the character development, which is why it's even more devastating in the third film when him and Ellie don't end up together.
I know it is. It's heartbreaking, man. 'Cause I really liked them as a duo. I thought they were great together.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll talk about that because that's not a spoiler because that's you're immediately aware from the first scene in Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah,
But we'll talk about that later.
absolutely, man.
But talking about him and Ellie, I feel like Alan should really care more about Ian hitting on Ellie because I would say the scene where Ian is sort of like dropping water on Ellie's fingers to
Yeah.
see where it falls. It sort of gives me the same energy as like the scene in A Star Is Born where Bradley Cooper like strokes Lady Gaga's nose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like, do you think if you like imagine you use that in like a club or something imagine if that worked? Because I was like, that is so smooth. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, it's just this weird sexual like tactile technique,
Yeah,
and it's not something that I'd go for if I'm
no,
honest. I think it's super creepy.
it is, and Alan probably should care more because Alan's a very attractive man, but Ian Malcolm is also a very attractive man, so that's all I'm saying.
Just two lovely lads.
Two lovely
What do you think
lads.
of Sam? What do you think of Sam Neill's American accent?
Real is he not American? I wouldn't have known.
He is from New Zealand.
Wow, I thought it was really good. What do you think?
Yeah, I especially took note of it in the third film because I thought there were moments where it was a little dicey in the first film, but the third film, he's really honed it and it is exceptional.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Like, well, we'll get into his absence in the second film when we talk about that. But uh, I like I just have so much great things to say about this film. And one thing I love about the Ian Malcolm character is he's 100% right in every scene. It's rare that we see one character in the film sort of challenge another character and actually make sense. He calls out that John Hammond's playing God by making all the dinosaurs female, and he's 100% right, I think. So I just love how the film acknowledges that.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I would say which of the two main male leads would you say is your favorite?
It's weird because in this film, Alan, but in the second film, Ian. It's weird. Like they interchange for me. I think in this film, Alan's better.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose because I guess this film, launched those characters both separately because as we said, the second film was led by Ian, the third film was led by Alan. So yeah, it's odd that they never thought to bring those characters back together because their sort of clashing of ideologies is some of the those are some of the best moments of the film.
Absolutely, man. Who do you think gives the better performance in the film, or who do you think's the better character?
Ooh, I mean, obviously, the memes of Ian Malcolm are hilarious, and
Absolutely.
he has some of the most iconic lines. But I feel like Alan is the better lead of a film. Like
Yeah.
I felt much more captivated by his character when he led the third film rather than Ian leading the second film.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely, buddy. I think they're both very talented actors, and it's surprising. I haven't actually seen Sam Neill in another film. I don't think apart from this film. Like, he seems like a very underrated actor.
Yeah, the only other film that I know him from is Hunt for the Wilder People. He also played in Thor Ragnarok in the scene where Thor 2 is played out as a play in Asgard.
Yeah.
Uh, he is the fake Odin.
Is he? Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. I love that.
He also plays an aged up version of Damien from The Omen in I believe the third film of that
Okay.
franchise.
Cool. Cool. Oh, so he has had some impressive work. So good on him because I think he's great in this. To be honest.
Yeah, and a huge staple of this franchise is death by dinosaur. And there's two very significant and quite brutal deaths. The first being that of the lawyer, And I feel like the
Yeah.
movie doesn't want you to care about the lawyer's death, but he seemed like an okay dude. Like he didn't seem that slimy.
Yeah. Yeah, like the thing about this film is, and all the films I suppose, is like the human stupidity mixed with the like the brutal nature of their deaths. Like so many times, like the humans are like, oh, the dinosaur's not so bad. I think Nedry, the Nedry guy, he's when he's like meets the Dilophosaurus, I think it's called, or something. And it's quite a small dinosaur. He's like, you're not so bad. But then I just thought like that thing will fucking tear you to shreds, mate. I think any dinosaur, if it's like even if it's half your size, would still absolutely kill you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this in the second film, but I mean, one guy is just eaten alive by like a dozen of the tiniest dinosaurs
Yeah,
you've ever
yeah,
seen.
yeah.
But speaking of Dennis Nedry's death, I just wish it was so much more violent because he's just the greasiest slime ball of any film character. Because he's not an overt villain. There's some villains in a film who commit murder or do other horrible heinous acts. This guy's just a gross slime ball, and I
Yeah,
just wanted him
yeah,
to have the most violent, horrific death of all time. I wish this film was rated 18 just so that he could get what he deserved.
yeah, like a brutal neck snap or decapitation or something.
Yeah, I mean, we see him blinded, and then his actual death is seen off screen, really.
Yeah,
As you said, to avoid getting a higher rating. But I really wish they had leaned into the gore of the film and just
absolutely,
give me what I needed, and that was to see
absolutely.
his head fucking torn from his body.
And you know one thing about this film, it's really like quite humorous as well. Like there's so many really great scenes. Now we've mentioned the iconic Ian Malcolm lines and stuff, but even when Alan is pretending to be shocked at the electric fence, I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
What a prick!
I know, I know. What a
Are you gonna
guy.
take like parenting tips from him?
Yeah, yeah. Because like he's not out of the woods there yet. Like you're still on an island with like hundreds of carnivorous dinosaurs, and he's just fooling around. He's just joking around.
Yeah, he's like, now is the time for banter.
Yeah, exactly. What a guy.
So, like as you said about his relationship with kids, it seems that it's popular belief that the child actors in this film are quite poor, and for the most part, I disagree.
I think
I
he
quite
is.
like Lexi, but I mean, there's some rough lines given to those kids where they're like
Yeah.
where they call the dinosaurs like, oh my god, it's the
It's
Vegiosaurs,
yeah, yeah,
ooh.
yeah. It's
And I'm
it's the
like, shut the
Metasaurus
fuck
Rex.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think they're very
and
great.
I feel like it's just what they're given with.
Yeah, I think they're not great in like when it's just a serious scene, but I think they're very good when like the velociraptors are attacking them in the kitchen. Like I think you can feel their terror in a sense. So I thought that was great. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, actually.
Yeah. And I would say one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Timmy gets zapped by the electric fence and nearly dies. That's my
uh,
favorite.
I would have
Because
respected the
it's
film
just
if they just
hilarious
killed him
how
off.
far he gets winged. Hmm?
I would have respected the film if they killed him off.
You,
That's brutal.
even child murder you
Even
love? Wow.
no, I'm joking. He's a nice kid, but he gets flung like 20 feet.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I have to say, it is perhaps the worst fake CPR I've ever seen. Because,
Yeah,
he sort of does like two presses and then that kid's back to life. It's like if that kid, if his brain hasn't melted from that electric fence, his
yeah,
back is snapped
yeah.
from that throw.
Oh man, one thing I wanted to ask you about this film, buddy, was like the T Rex and stuff, because I think it looks so amazing in this, but at the end there's sort of like a T Rex ex machina where it ultimately saves the human characters. Like, what did you think of that? Do you think that was cheap, or did you like it? Because I personally thought it was great.
Yeah, I had wondered to myself, why did the T-Rex save them? And I suppose, yeah, it could be interpreted as a, well, I mean, it is undoubtedly a Deus Ex Machina because, it saves them at the last minute. But, I mean, we are told that, the herbivores eat the grass and then the carnivores eat the herbivores. So it's clearly not out of the question that the dinosaurs eat other dinosaurs. So I guess we just have to chalk it up to incredible coincidence.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah, yeah.
that he just that dinosaur, sorry, she that she saw other dinosaurs and they were more familiar to her than the humans, so that was her diet consists more of dinosaurs than it does of humans. So I guess that was just the natural the natural food source in that room. Like what were your feelings on that?
Yeah, I thought it was good because I think the T Rex is definitely the best looking dinosaur in the film. Like that thing is huge and it looks really good. Like there's a great combination of practical and effects and CGI. So yeah, I thought it was great. 'Cause I did, I've talked about in the podcast before, like wanting characters to die and in sort of a brutal sense. But in this film, I actually genuinely love all the main characters, so I didn't want any of them to die.
Yeah, and you sort of you brought up the fact that there's the kitchen scene where the kids feel immense fear for their lives, and uh, I hear my brother looming.
You're okay.
Yeah, he's gone downstairs.
No
Uh,
worries.
yeah, so as you said, we see the kids in the kitchen, full of fear, and they're dirty, they're distressed. And my brother announced as we were watching the film, they've been gone for one night. Why do they look like orphans? And I thought it was a fair question because I mean we see in the third film that a kid has been on the island for 8 weeks
He's in
and
pretty
he
good
looks in
nick.
pretty good nick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
just seeing praise.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does look in pretty tidy condition, and these kids look like they've seen some
Disheveled?
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, these kids at least managed to get out of the whole situation without seeing a dead body or witnessing a murder. Like of the characters in this film, they came out. They did get out of this the easiest, except the kid that should be burnt to a crisp.
Apart
Like
from him.
Lex
Apart from
should,
him.
yeah, Lex should feel pretty good with her experience.
Oh
She
yeah.
basically just got to see some dinosaurs and have a good time. Like not
Absolutely.
nothing that traumatic happened to her.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's a great point. It's a great point, and uh, yeah, it's weird because in some instances, like we've sort of mentioned, like how their performances are a bit sort of they're not like perfect, but they're not bad. Like they're not like Edward Furlong. We've established, but they're good. They're decent. Like I think it's weird because we don't see them in we see them once in the second film, don't we? And then we never see them again.
Yeah.
So it's
They
weird.
may come back for Jurassic World Dominion just as a wee cameo.
Oh, I hope so, man. I hope so.
Yes. So right after the T-Rex attack at the end of the film, they're finally rescued by Chopper, and just as they were in that chopper, right before that, Alan Grant, says that he refused to endorse the park, and Hammond says, "Me too." He's in agreement that the park should not go ahead. And I was thinking, yeah, I don't think you should be getting off that free with you just saying, yeah, the park isn't going to open. You should also definitely go to prison for manslaughter.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. Like we haven't really mentioned the John Hammond character. Like he's not an entirely innocent guy in the sense that a lot of humans have died in his park under his regulations. So he should probably be in prison. Yeah, for sure. Like he gets off pretty lightly, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we don't see much of him in the second film, and we don't see him at all in the third film. So this may be that we just didn't see much of this character, and it's secretly like a Willy Wonka situation where he's actually built this park to bring people to lure them and kill them,
Like a
like
syndrome style from
the,
The
yeah,
Incredibles.
like this might be his syndrome island. It might be his Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's very possible.
It is possible. It is quite funny. He's such a nice old man, and like inside, he's probably just like luring people to his island just to kill them with ravenous dinosaurs. Like, what a
Yeah,
guy! What a guy!
because obviously people will say that that's not viable because then he does save them at the end and then he goes in the chopper. But maybe he brought them to the island to kill them, but then he didn't expect Dennis to like shut down the fences. So then the dinosaurs came after him as well, and he had to save everyone.
Yeah,
But he may have still brought them to the island to kill them and call it an accident.
yeah, yeah. It's a great point. I hadn't actually considered that because yeah, I would like that. I would sort of like a dark twist. Like that would be interesting.
Yeah. Did you have anything further on the first film in
N-
the Jurassic Park trilogy?
Nothing from me, buddy. Anything from you?
Nothing from me. So I would love to hear your rating of the film, Matthew.
Awesome, buddy. So I think this film we've talked about so revolutionary, amazing effects, great plot. And like we've said, the three leads and stuff are absolutely amazing. So I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. I'm a huge fan. I'd love to hear your rating, Callum. What would you give it, man?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm in full agreement with you. I loved everything about it. Incredibly revolutionary. As I got to see this in the film, as I got to see the film in the cinema, it does feel like I saw it upon release. So I do have a weird sense of nostalgia
That's a
for it.
great one. Yeah, yeah.
So I will rate it, based on that, and I'm sure that influences my rating. But I will be giving it a 10 out of 10.
Awesome, man. I'm so glad. It's really great to have a film that you have that sort of relationship with. And no, I'm so happy for you, buddy, because it is a great film at the end of the day, and it's a really fantastic franchise. So, did you want to move on to our second film then? Yeah,
Yes.
let's
So
do
our
it.
second film for today is The Lost World Jurassic Park, and that title makes me very upset because I'm a meticulous film
Yeah,
collector. Not to sound arrogant,
I
but
get you. I get you.
I have a very meticulously organized DVD collection, and I had to spend extra money to get this trilogy in like a box set so that I could keep them all together. It's the same with the Dark Knight trilogy because it goes Batman Begins, then the Dark Knight. So for the
Yeah.
Jurassic Park trilogy, I had to buy a box so that I can keep them all together.
Do you have
These
the same
absolute
box?
bastards have no consideration. No, mine's a bit more pedestrian.
See, like it's weird because it's sort of like a John Wick. Isn't it John Wick Chapter 2, and then it's like Parabellum or something, isn't it?
Yeah, then it's John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, and I'm like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, I know. And like you said, like Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises. It's a weird one because like I'm just gonna I have a hot take about this film. This is my favorite Jurassic Park film, if I'm honest.
You crazy person.
I know. I looked on like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. This says like 51% and stuff. It's slated.
Like I do think this is the worst of the trilogy, but it's the worst of a brilliant trilogy, so I still really enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. Why isn't Sam Neill in this? Is there any explanation for that?
I looked into the casting on the Wikipedia page, and there was no mention of Sam Neill, so I don't think he was ever intended for the sequel. So I don't think it was that they wanted him and they couldn't get him, or there was any ill will or bad blood because obviously he came
Yeah,
back for the third film. So I think it was genuinely that they probably wanted to give, like, they probably saw Jeff Goldblum as like the rising star that he was, and decided to give
yeah,
him a film that he could spearhead. But yeah,
yeah.
it seems that they had no desire to have Sam Neill in the film from the beginning.
That's really interesting, man. But you don't really see that anymore these days. So I respect the film for that. Like it clearly had an intended vision from the get go. So kudos.
Yes. So did you feel that this film, because I would say that this is my biggest criticism of the film, is that it just really lacks originality.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I get you. I get you. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it does definitely lack originality, and I suppose there's only so much you can do with it with these sort of characters and this sort of idea of Jurassic Park in essence. So, but for me, I don't know. It's just I think the film is different enough for me to appreciate it more. Not maybe not appreciate. It's not the right word, but to enjoy it more than the first film. Like I think the action scenes are way better, and I think Jeff Goldblum as a lead is fantastic. I think Alan Grant in the first film is the better character, but in this film, I think Ian Malcolm is fantastic. I think this is the best individual performance in the trilogy for me. So, I'm so glad they give Jeff Goldblum the opportunity to spearhead his own movie, as you said perfectly, Callum.
Mm. Yeah, I have a different perspective.
I respect
That
that.
I
I
really
respect
think
that.
I really think that this franchise really should have stopped at one. That they should have made one Jurassic Park film. Because I feel like the other two films are great, but for me they never live up to the original. And what I would have done had I been in charge of this franchise, which obviously I'm never going to be in charge of a franchise, but
You
what
never
I would have
know.
done was one Jurassic Park film, and then 10, 15, 20 years later, you have them go back to the island and then tell a different story, but then there's some familiarity. You
Yeah,
can play off nostalgia.
yeah,
But
yeah,
this film is set only 4 years later, so they're basically doing the same story, but incredibly quick succession. And they've tried to make it original by calling this by moving the dinosaurs to a different island, the site B of Jurassic Park. so that that we're in a different terrain. It gives you the sort of illusion of a new original story. But that's really not a direction that I think it should have taken, because
Okay.
I think that uh, I think that you needed the character's complexity of Ian, oh sorry, of Malcolm having, yeah, his name's Ian Malcolm. So I've
Yeah.
written Malcolm just because that's a surname. But yeah, of Ian going back to the original island, I think you need that struggle of like, oh, is my girlfriend worth it? To go back to
Yeah.
the original
Yeah.
island,
Yeah.
rather than him just go to an entirely new one. Because I feel like then why do you even have any characters from the original? Because I would say the only advantage to having characters from the original is that they're familiar with the island and then they have a unique perspective. But just getting Ian Malcolm because he's been to the first island, like that's not going to give your crew any help on this new island.
It's a great point, buddy. I agree with everything you've said. And the first one is the first one set in Isla Sorna or something, and then this one is on what's this one called again? It's weird. It's a different weird name, isn't it?
I could not
Anyway,
tell you.
but like yeah, I think like you said perfectly, man. It seems like the film is trying to have like an excuse to go back to sort of the same sort of plot. Like I have a note in my notes here. Like John Hammond is loving the fact that the dinosaurs are thriving without human interference, yet sends in a human team to monitor them and interfere with them. What an idiot!
He is the biggest fucking dumb piece of shit in this film. And like that's again where I'm like, is he trying to murder people on this island?
That's yeah,
Very
yeah. It's
possibly.
a great point. It's a really great point. Because like it's sort of the similar fact that oh, what film did we mention this where you've already succeeded something, but you're going out of your way to do something to prove that you've already succeeded. It's sort of a similar way with this. Like the dinosaurs are thriving without human interaction, so he sends humans over there who are obviously going to interfere with the dinosaurs to monitor their environment. Like it's so futile. Like you've already won. You know what I mean?
I mean, I suppose to their knowledge that's the truth, but also so they don't actually really deal with this, but the film actually opens with a little girl being attacked by dinosaurs
Yeah, yeah,
off a different island, and they never actually address the fact that the dinosaurs are moving, that some of them have escaped the island. They never actually sort that issue. They just go to the island and then they leave the island, and then they're like sorted, everything's fine.
yeah,
They never actually addressed the fact that someone was murdered by dinosaurs while not on that island.
yeah.
or,
So it
or
seems like
maybe had they gone to the coast of that island and they were actually on the dinosaur island and they didn't realize that was Site B of Jurassic Park. Was that it?
maybe because it sort of seems like there's dinosaurs on multiple islands in that sort of chain of islands, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's very possible because obviously, it seems that every site for Jurassic Park is in Costa Rica. So I guess because of the government cover up of the first film and the events of the first film, I guess it's possible that people would travel there with no knowledge of the dinosaurs being there.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe I just misinterpreted the opening of the film.
No, I think maybe you're spot on, mate. It's not really well explained to be honest. Like it's unclear, and like you said, the film doesn't really go back to that, which is unusual because I suppose every Jurassic Park film has to open with someone getting killed by a dinosaur, so maybe it's just part of the charm.
And I'm sure you cheered when it was a little girl.
I'll tell you one thing I did cheer about. Julianne Moore is in this film, and I'm a huge fan. She's one of my faves. She's one of my favorite actresses, and I think she's fantastic in this. She's sort of she sort of reminds me of Sigourney Weaver in a sense. I don't know why, but I don't know. I just get that vibe. And like this film, I don't know if you've seen the Peter Jackson King Kong, man, but this film is so similar to that, plot wise and even theme wise. That's probably why I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, isn't Vince Vaughn's character pretty much just Jack Black's character from that film?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that's another thing. I love Vince Vaughn, so it's great to have him in this as well. And you sort of expect him to play a bit of an arsehole, but he's not the worst. He seems like a decent guy.
Yeah. I usually dislike Vince Vaughn in films, but he was perfectly serviceable in this film. And as you said, this film is led by Jeff Goldblum, and I think he's great. And we sort of discussed that that some other films maybe like you think that they're of a superior quality, but you also say they somewhat lack the magic of the first. And
Yeah.
I think that is maybe the absence of Sam Neill. but
Maybe, yeah.
also I think that they sort of strip this character, the character of Ian Malcolm a bit, of some of his weird zaniness, and they made him just like a cool guy with a cool guy haircut and a leather jacket. You
Yeah,
know,
true.
like he has sort of a buzz cut and a leather jacket. And he's just a cool guy. But in the first film, he's a fucking weirdo. Like,
Yeah.
he's sitting like shirtless in a bunker. Like being
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, hey Laura Dern. Do you want to get some of this water dripped on your hand? Like there was none of that like
Yeah, no, I
weird
get you.
creepiness,
Yeah,
and
I think
that's what I liked about the character.
I have the same, man. I think in this film, it fails to recapture the charm of the first, but I think it improves in overall quality. Like my favorite line in the entire saga is when like they're hanging on to their lives on this like truck that's like fallen down at a cliff, and one of the characters goes, "Do you need anything else?" And then Ian Malcolm's like, "Yeah, three double cheeseburgers and everything." I thought that absolutely brilliant. I love that.
That is great. And you talked about it maybe not, having the same, the wow moment
Yeah.
of the first film. And I would say that that's particularly apparent in the first shot of a dinosaur in this film. Not as in not in the first scene, but whenever the main characters land on the island and they look over this landscape, and then you see another of the dinosaurs rear their head up, and then the music swells
Yeah.
as it does in the first film, and I'm just like, yeah, I've seen it. It just seemed completely played out. It expects you to react as if you're seeing a dinosaur for the first time, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
I get you.
completely manufactured, and it just did nothing for me.
I get you, man. No, I can 100% understand where you're coming from there, man. And you know, I do get, yeah, it definitely does feel to recapture some of the magic of the first film, especially with the showcase of the dinosaurs here. But I think it makes up for that with the action scenes. In particular, when the truck is sort of falling off the cliff and they have to like tie cables to trees and then a car, and we sort of see that like the character of Eddie, he dies there, and that is so brutal to me. And also, we know when Julianne Moore's character is like on the pane of glass and it's about to shatter, like that's really suspenseful. And I suppose the film, from a critical standpoint, like it sort of seems like, okay, in the first film we had one T-Rex, in this film we're gonna have two, because double the action, double the fun. And do you know what I mean? It sort of seems like
Yeah,
having two T-Rexes is an excuse for quality, but it's not. But it still works for me. But I can understand why, I can understand why someone would say, it's not, it fails to recapture the magic of the first.
but yeah, that is funny you say that, because almost every franchise from the '90s, whenever they were doing a sequel that usually wasn't as good as the original, they're like, we'll put two of something in.
Yeah, yeah.
You like Terminator. There's two in
There's two
this film.
term.
I know people love Terminator Judgment Day, but it's not my favorite of the franchise. I prefer the original.
Yeah,
And I once again I think that it feels to capture the magic of the first film.
yeah.
And yeah, that's some bizarre logic.
It is bizarre logic, and uh, yeah, like, yeah. It's weird because like this film, I think there's a lot of great stuff in there. Like in this film, I would argue it's a lot more brutal than the first one. We see a man being eaten alive by like little tiny dinosaurs and stuff. But in this film, I think the human characters are way more annoying.
Yeah, definitely,
Like,
100%.
I just have I just have a note in my phone here, like, fucking humans, man. Like, don't scream, like, I know there's like ravenous dinosaurs about the place, but if you want to survive, don't alert them to your presence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's even worse than the third film, and we'll probably get into that.
Oh, it
But
is,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you. They specifically bring in specialist dinosaur experts to tell you how to navigate the situation, and they tell you to stand still, and then you fucking bolt.
Yeah.
It's like I don't understand. Like why have you gone through the process of paying this person to be your dinosaur expert, and then just ignoring all the advice that they give you?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a great
but yeah,
point.
I agree with you, especially because by the end of the film, 2/3 of the main cast are actually technically villains, because they're all performing weird experiments, and they're capturing dinosaurs. So the people that you're meant to care about, that are being killed, they all deserve it, really.
Yeah, it's a good
Especially
point.
the one guy, as you brought up, the guy who is murdered by like a dozen of the tiny dinosaurs. I think that's a way more original death. Like I would say pretty much most of this film is a rehash of the original. But one thing that they did right in getting new was the kills,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
him being eaten alive by the tiny dinosaurs rather than just like one bite in half by the T Rex was I think the best kill of the film.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. We've talked about cool death scenes in movies before, but to be honest, being killed by a dinosaur, that's a cool way to go. In general, and one thing I found was quite funny in this film, like we see a character like under the waterfall, like a snake goes into his clothes, then like he runs out, he's like, ah, it's a snake, and then like just gets like decapitated by a T Rex, pretty much. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Speaking of violent deaths, if you had to have a violent death, what way would you want to go?
That's a good one. I think Great White Shark,
Wow.
just
Yeah.
brutal.
Uh,
What about you?
yeah. You have to balance like how cool it is with how painful it is, because I think if I had to die a painful, horrible, horrific death, probably explosion saving someone else.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah,
That's probably a good one to have a legacy off the back of. Uh, but then death by fire sounds like probably the worst way to die,
yeah. You know what
like the
I quite
most
like?
painful, and I don't think it would be quick either.
I quite like, the classic movie scenes where it's, a building is falling and then a character has to push them out of the way before they get splatted on by the building. I think that sounds fun. So imagine like a huge skyscraper falling and then like there's an old lady who is struggling to get out of the way, and you push her out of the way, but you just get absolutely flattened by the building. So as you said, saving someone's life but being crushed. Then you've got no body
Yeah,
to have a funeral with.
yeah, but if it's like one splatter that just like watermelon destroys your head, that just kills you instantly. Yeah, that's probably a fair way to go. But if it's like it crushes your body and you have to lay there for 2 hours
Yeah.
gasping for air, not the
No,
perfect
tell you what.
scenario.
Here's a question. What is your least favorite way to die? Like drowning or buried alive or something, I'd imagine, or what is it?
Uh, Drowning seems quite grim. Yeah. Just I guess because you can't breathe and it's probably quite prolonged. Uh, like death by fire, like just being lit on fire rather than like exploding,
Yeah,
probably sounds like one of the worst. But
absolutely.
if you were eaten by a huge animal, like if you were bitten in half by a dinosaur, like you're obviously immediately dead. Or if
Yeah.
you have your head bitten off by a dinosaur, immediately dead. So yeah, I would say probably being lit on fire is probably the worst.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say drowning or like suffocating of any form. Oh, that just scares me, to be honest, man. Or like by a big snake. I don't like snakes. Or a giant slug or something like
Fair.
that. I don't know how a giant slug would kill me, but like I hate slugs. Something about them, man. I just don't
We
like.
get into the weirdest discussions on this podcast.
I know. Part of the charm, though, right? Part of the charm.
Oh yeah, fingers crossed. Let's hope so.
Fingers crossed. Fingers
So
crossed.
if we're to move back to the film, uh, Ian discovers that John Hammond has sent him to the island whilst having the knowledge that his nephew and a team will be there to capture the dinosaurs. And Hammond has said to Ian that he's learned from his mistakes. But if InGen have covered up murders before, like this group of dinosaur hunters will have no issue with just murdering the entire group and then covering it up.
Yeah.
Like they clearly have no morals. They'll kill dinosaurs. They'll capture dinosaurs. They've covered up murders. They will commit murder.
Yeah,
They've brought a
exactly.
hunter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
honestly, I'm surprised that they didn't murder like Ian. But I guess he was like their only hope because he was pretty much the only dinosaur expert left to help them. So I mean, he's not even a dinosaur expert. Like,
He's a
in the
mathematician, isn't
plot
he?
description, yeah, it says he's a mathematician. I don't really know how he's helpful. He knows about chaos theory, probability, mathematics. I don't really know how he was, of the four people that John Hammond chose. I
Yeah.
guess because of his previous experience, but I still don't think that's nowhere near as helpful as just getting a paleontologist, especially because it's uncharted territory on a new island.
Yeah.
Uh,
You get a
but
point.
yeah, obviously they aren't murdered by the people from InGen, but they so easily could have
They
been.
could have been, yeah. It definitely seems like a very illegal operation, doesn't it?
I mean, you I guess anything that you create is your possession, so you can do what you want with it because they're not technically animals because they're a genetic creation. They're not children.
Yeah,
They're not humans. So if they're not humans, they're not animals. What are they? So
yeah,
I guess they have no rights. But I mean, definitely the murders that they're covering up. Well, not the murders, like the killings by the dinosaurs that they're legally responsible for. Them having been covered up is certainly illegal.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like John Hammond's got a lot of he's got a lot of bodies in his closet. You can imagine. He's probably a very shady guy.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the film, people, at the Hammond residence, sort of are disgusted by Ian Malcolm because they say, "Oh well, you spoke about it. You broke the non-disclosure agreement." But I'm sure, witnessing death,
Yeah,
nullifies a non-disclosure agreement. There
yeah.
must be certain criteria where you can speak to law enforcement.
You'd like to think so. You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
You definitely would. Uh, yes. So we're introduced to the character of Kelly because this film is just desperate to have a child in the franchise for some reason. I get that these are, I mean, what are these films? Like, they're not kids' films, really. They're
Yeah,
appropriate for kids, but I suppose they're family films. So the film just sort of desperately, shoehorns a kid into the film, which is Ian Malcolm's daughter. And her logic throughout the film was annoying, with her being like, "Oh, well, you said don't listen to you, so I didn't listen to you and I came along." And I was like, "Shut the fuck up, Kelly." But
yeah.
I have to say that the child actress herself did an admirable job.
She's great. Yeah, yeah. It was nice of the film to give her like a gymnastic scene. I thought.
That was one of the worst scenes in the film. Like, have you ever seen the deleted scenes of Love Actually? Because
No.
the character that plays Liam Neeson's stepson,
Yeah,
sorry, the
yeah.
actor that plays Liam Neeson's stepson. In the original cut of the film, there's references throughout that he's a gymnast, and then when he runs to the airport at the end to like
Cartwheels.
when he runs to the airport to confess his love to his crush. Yeah, like whenever he's like stopped by security, he does like flips and shit. But like they haven't. But like obviously because this was like the rough edit, they hadn't added effects, so it's like a 6 foot tall man doing like the gymnastics for this like 4'10" child, and it's hilarious because they hadn't added the effects yet, but it's hilarious to watch, and it reminded me of that because I'm like, this is clearly like a 5'10" professional gymnast.
Yeah. Like to be fair, like the gymnastics was done very well. I'm not a huge gymnastics, fan, but it looked good. And also during that scene, I thought like when they're trying to dig under the door and also the velociraptors are trying to dig under the door, I thought that was really dramatic. And I think what the film does do really well is sort of balance the humor with the action and have better action scenes. I think the Velociraptors are really great in this film. Maybe not as good as they are in the third film, but still pretty great. And when the T Rex attacks human civilization, that's a classic. Love that.
Yeah, and speaking of the T Rex, that was obviously the goal of InGen. By going to the island, they wanted to either capture a Velociraptor or a T Rex to publicly display in the San Diego Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And that confuses me because I just wonder why their goal was to ever take a T Rex or a raptor when they could have taken a herbivore, which never would have posed a threat to them or to tourists.
Yeah.
If because they live on completely opposing sides of the island. They say that like the carnivores are sort of in the middle, and then the herbivores are like on the outer rim. So I mean, you easily could have captured a herbivore, which I think are more visually interesting to look at anyway. And that's all that the San Diego Jurassic Park was going to be, just
Yeah.
to like look and touch by tourists. So I think the herbivores are much better looking, and also they're not going to eat you. So I
Absolutely.
guess maybe it was just because they're so like every herbivore we see in this film is so gigantic. I suppose there was no way of transporting it, but they wanted to get a baby raptor or a baby Tyrannosaurus Rex anyway. So I mean, I feel like you could have just cultured a baby herbivore, and then that
Yeah.
would have been a much more attractive thing to put in the San Diego.
Absolutely. Like if San Diego Zoo said, "Oh, we have a dinosaur attraction. It's a real life dinosaur," to me, it wouldn't matter what dinosaur it is. You'd probably still go if it was a herbivore or carnivore. So yeah, just get a herbivore or a baby herbivore or something, right?
But also, if they were like, yeah, it's a T-Rex, but also it may break out and eat you,
Yeah.
that's probably where I'm gonna say no. But if the issue is, there's a herbivore, if it breaks out, they're not gonna do anything. Like
Yeah.
like
It
who
might
who
snack on
wrote
some
that
grass.
risk assessment?
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
wrote the risk assessment that like balanced that where they're like, yeah, getting a T-Rex, it's probably worth it.
Yeah, yeah,
Probably
yeah.
worth it. It
Yeah.
balances out
One thing about
risk
these
versus
films,
reward.
yeah, exactly, man. I like one thing about these films is we see innocent farm animals and pets get absolutely devoured by dinosaurs. Like we see in the first film, like the is it the goat or the cow just gets absolutely destroyed, and then also in this film we see a poor pet dog get destroyed by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I thought that was absolutely brutal.
I don't think I witnessed the dog, but yeah, the ferocious mauling of the cow and the goat was insane.
It was.
But I mean, I suppose yeah, I mean you could argue that that's once again the animal kingdom,
I
the
suppose,
circle of
yeah.
life. But also these are genetically engineered dinosaurs, and as Ian Malcolm said, natural selection selected them for extinction. So I guess they don't belong in the animal kingdom anymore. They shouldn't be part of the circle of life. So I guess it goes against nature to have to feed them that kind of life.
It's a great point, buddy. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Callum. Yeah, it's a great point because yeah, like we've said, sort of the sort of natural selection element of the film, like it is very morally complex, and I think that adds to the quality of the saga in general. You know,
Yeah. And I would say that my favorite part of this film, aside from the wonderful cheeseburger line that you brought up,
love
is
it.
how prolonged and deserved Ludlow's death was.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned in the previous one, Hammond deserved to go to prison, but Ludlow deserved to die, and I'm glad he did, because he was the only idiot stupid enough to bring a dinosaur to the mainland.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And no, it is great when a film pays off. Like it's so satisfying, isn't it?
Yeah, they first start to peck him and then maul him and then eat him, and I was
Yeah.
just like, this is amazing. He deserves this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what
Master.
I think he probably yeah, he has sort of the same sliminess level as Dennis. But I mean, I don't know. Dennis technically he didn't even commit as big a crime. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, he was responsible for the outbreak of the dinosaurs because he let down the fences, but also see, it's confusing because we never actually know what Dennis's intentions were because he has very little dialogue and he's stupid. So, like,
Yeah.
did he actually like was he trying to destroy the reputation of Jurassic Park by letting the animals out, or was he just so stupid that he turned everything off when he just tried to like turn the camera off? Like we don't know
Yeah.
because the character dies before we find out his motivation, other than
Yeah.
to steal the samples.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
no, I
guess
know.
he's responsible for horrific acts, but we don't actually know what his intentions were.
It's a great point, man. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Callum. And yeah, like is it Ludlow, isn't it? Yeah.
Ludlow,
Ludlow,
yeah.
yeah, his death so satisfying, and I think I think like you said perfectly, sort of the midway of the podcast, the film really does the dinosaur kills really well, and yeah, that's why I love it. The T Rex attacking civilization. That's sort of the first time we see this in the entire trilogy, really, of like a dinosaur in the actual human world. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of enjoy the dinosaurs being localized to the island just because it creates this sort of, like like Predator vibe,
Yeah.
from that franchise, or like a
Mhm.
Craven the Hunter vibe from
Yeah.
Spider-Man, where it's one animal hunting the other.
Hmm.
And I think that sort of adds to the tension. But
Yeah, I
when
get
it's
you.
sort of just, playing a game of cat and mouse like on the streets of humanity, I feel like we sort of see, we see like Western civilization in movies too much. Like, I sort of liked it being moved to, a remote
Yeah,
island.
I get you, man. I know 100% get you there, and yeah, that's why it's sort of very similar to King Kong in that sense. By the end of King Kong, that sort of happens. So yeah, I do get you, man. I do get you.
Yeah, did you have anything further on the film?
Nothing from me, buddy. Anything from you, man?
No, no, nothing more.
I'd love to hear your rating, dude.
Right. So widely, I think that everything in this film is good. As you say, a lot of the action scenes are a step up from the original. They do attempt the one-upmanship of, well, we had one T-Rex in the first, we'll have two this time. That was an interesting move from them that I didn't really appreciate until you mentioned it. Uh, Ian Malcolm, I do think the character has been sort of stripped of what made him interesting in the
Yeah.
first film. I think he is just a generic cool dude, like cool rad dude in this film.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I'm out getting girlfriends and having kids, and I'm wearing my leather jacket and being cool.
Yeah.
It just wasn't like the weirdo that was in the first film.
Yeah. It's a good
And
point.
I do think this film lacks some of the magic. It feels a bit rehashed by the original. I don't think it's very exciting, but there's nothing overtly wrong with it. Just it didn't have any of the revolutionary steps that were taken by the first film. So I would say it's a great film that lacks originality. I would give it a 7.5 or an 8.
I respect that, buddy. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I agree with everything you've said. And for me, I think it's one of the it's a weird film because from a lot of people's perspectives, I suppose if the first film never existed, this automatically becomes a way better film. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
for me, I think this is a really great sequel, and it's I think it does in many ways it does feel to recapture that of the first, but I think if you do remove, like, if I remove the first Jurassic Park from my mind, this is a way better film. And I think it's a great sequel in general. I think the action scenes, like we've mentioned, really stellar. Effects, the score, everything we've mentioned, great as always. So I'd probably give it a 9.5 out of 10. It's not quite hitting the 10, but I still am a big fan of this one, man.
Would you say that? Well, we'll move on to Jurassic Park 3 now,
Yeah,
and I just wanted to ask you, where does Jurassic Park 3 land in your mind? Like, how does it stack up to the other two?
I think this film is quite underrated, to be honest. I think this film is probably I think if we're talking number one, Jurassic Park 2, and then joint second, Jurassic Park 1 and Jurassic Park 3, like none of them are like worse than the other, if you know what I mean. Sort of they're all in sort of a
Hmm.
similar playing field. What about yourself, buddy?
I do believe that would be considered quite the hot take
Perhaps, yeah, yeah. What would you
because
what would you say, man? Because do you think this film's underrated?
I definitely believe this film's underrated, and I would probably rank the first one significantly above the other two, but then I would probably place 2 and 3 in roughly the same area. I would say they're pretty much on par.
It's great, man. Yeah, yeah. And like, one thing about this film, Alan's back,
Thankfully.
but no Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, devastating. Like, this film once again makes the mistake of not reuniting the Trinity, and I think it's a serious mistake because yeah, I just don't think you can capture the magic again. And this film has Laura Dern in it, but barely. She's in all of 2 scenes of the film,
Yeah,
and it's criminally she's criminally underrepresented in these films because
absolutely.
she's an amazing character in the first film, and she carries over as an amazing character into this film, who's just incredibly underused. So I think that this film still makes better use of the original cast, but it feels once again in capturing it. But I assume that this was by design. Like, I assume they didn't want Jeff Goldblum. I assume they just wanted to tell two completely different standalone stories and sort of see how the audiences sort of how they received one spearheaded by Jeff Goldblum, one spearheaded by Sam Neill.
Absolutely, man. And one thing about this film, I think you can tell straight off the bat, is that, it's a 2001 release. I think you can definitely tell that this is moving more into the modern era of filmmaking in the sense that, like, the prequel trilogy of Star Wars are very different tonally and conceptually to the original trilogy. So I think this film feels very different from the first two, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in my opinion. I think the effects are the best they've ever been. I think the CGI is the best it's ever been. Strangely, I think like the practical set design of like the rainforest and stuff. We haven't really seen that in a Jurassic Park film before. We've seen it more in terms of like the enclosures and stuff and the like the facilities. In this film, they're sort of like in the wilderness. And I thought that was marvelous, to be honest, buddy. And I'm a huge fan of this film.
Yeah. So if you wanted to talk about the narrative of the film opens with a scene of the boyfriend of one of the main characters, Amanda, and the son, her son Eric, parasailing over the Jurassic. It, I mean, it's not Jurassic Park, but the Jurassic Park Site B, which
Yeah,
we don't remember the name of the island, but I thought incredible idea parasailing over
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it sort of got me thinking, was like, is like parasailing or like a skydive something that you'd be ever interested in?
I would definitely be interested in parasailing because I feel like going upwards isn't as dangerous as falling downwards.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so I think if I was 100% confident in the safety of it, I would skydive. Uh, but I don't think that I could ever be that convinced. What are your thoughts?
I think skydiving sounds cool, but it's just the fear of the parachute and this and the reserve parachute failing. Like that very rarely happens, I would imagine. But like you'd like to imagine if you just hit the ground, you'd just instantly be dead. But it's just the fact that like, oh, if you're still conscious of the pain you can feel from that, like, can you imagine like how messed up your body would be from that? That would be crazy, man.
Yeah, like if I had to do it, I would probably uh I'd probably do it over water because they say that when you hit that, it's just like hitting concrete. So you'd probably be killed instantly. So either you fall into the water and then you're like picked up by a boat or something, or you die. So if I had to do it, that's probably how I would.
It's a great, yeah. We love to talk about death in the movie Miss channel, don't we, man?
Love it. But yeah, but parasailing, with a view, because usually
Oh
it's
yeah.
just for fun, like you're on the back of a boat, but like actually trying to see a view of the dinosaurs, I think that's much more appealing than actually going to the island.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And you know what? One thing about this film I think it does better than all the other ones is the dinosaurs. And strangely, I think this film has the best dinosaur action scenes. We see like the Spinosaurus is sort of the big bad of the film, so to speak. And I think it looks amazing. Like that's the best practical effects I've ever seen personally.
Yeah, and this is the first introduction of. I looked it up, and they're not exactly pterodactyls, but similar flying
Yeah.
dinosaurs that we hadn't seen before, because that creates an entirely new form of action scene that we hadn't seen before.
Hmm.
Because before, it was just limited to being chased on the ground, and that got repetitive by the second film.
Yeah.
But this time we could finally get like an aerial battle, and I kind of wish that there was a situation where maybe like a fighter jet came in to rescue them, and then they had to do like an aerial
Yeah.
dogfight where they were
That
trying
would
to
be
shoot
so
them
good.
from the air.
That'd be so good.
I think that would have been interesting, especially because this film actually has quite a skimpy runtime, compared to the other two. It's 2 hours, and then an hour and a half. So I think there was room for maybe one final action sequence.
Yeah, man. And you know what the thing, like I was just looking in the DVD box here, like we sort of see the first two films are characterized by the T-Rex, but like even the logo of this film, it's like the Spinosaurus, which I think is cool. And it sort of like characterizes like it's weird because like we'll get into the T-Rex Spinosaurus fight later on, but it's not even long enough for me. I would have loved to see it way longer because it's so good.
Yeah, I'm just now realizing like what a big dinosaur nerd you are because I don't know what the fuck a Spinosaurus is. I didn't take notice of a battle between the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Spinosaurus. I was like, same thing.
Two dinosaurs,
So I
yeah. No,
mean,
I understand.
yeah, I
I
had
understand.
literally no frame of reference to differentiate them, except when Alan Grant is just yelling out, and that's a
That's a
Velociraptor. But
yeah.
like
That's a
some of these people
Vegisaurus.
are like yeah, like some of these people are like baffling idiots. Like, like he needs to tell some people like what a Tyrannosaurus Rex is. Like
Yeah.
that's obvious, and what a Velociraptor is. That's obvious. But he's naming. People are like, oh, and what's this? And he's like, it's fuck's sake. We're introduced again to the characters from the original film of Alan Grant and Ellie. What's her surname? Statler. So we're once again introduced to these characters, but unfortunately, we learned that they have broken up since the events of the first film. And I was really devastated to see this because
Absolutely.
I think by the end of the film, he had grown enough that he deserved her because he seemed sort of dismissive of her in the beginning of the film. He didn't like kids, and that was a big part of her ethos. That was something that she dreamed of in the future. So he didn't seem like a great fit for her, but I think he really changed on the island. And I
Completely.
definitely think that an experience as disastrous as the one that they experienced would have created like a lifelong bond between the two of them.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Callum. Really, the Alan Ellie relationship. It's one of my favorites in the entire franchise, to be honest. And it is very sad that they don't end up together because, like you said, he is sort of developed as a man and as a character. And I think they would have become really, really right for each other after that. Because you know the way that you sort of see that maybe in real life as well, like people are bonded by certain experiences they share together. And I think, like you said perfectly, dude, like that they would have been bonded for each other. You know, it's sort of sad.
Yeah, I'm praying that in Jurassic World Dominion she's got a divorce and then they're back on
Yeah,
because
fingers
it's
crossed,
not
man.
impossible.
Not impossible. Yeah, yeah, no. It's you never know. You never know, man.
Yeah, and I would say that this film, obviously this is a science fiction film. For the last two films, we've had to suspend our disbelief on the potential existence of genetically engineered dinosaurs. But no, like this film, more so than the other two, really forces you to suspend your disbelief. We'll talk about the first instance now, and I would say there's a second, even larger instance. But for the first instance, I do not believe that Alan would ever return to that island
Yeah,
just with the motivation of money.
yeah. Isn't there like a really obvious line? It's like, no force in the world would make me go back to that island, and then like 20 minutes later, he's on the plane.
Yeah, because obviously, it turns out that he's been conned into going on the island and that he's not actually going to get any money. But I can't imagine what sum of money convinced him. Uh, because I mean, obviously, from the proposition that they gave, they presented his role as just a tour guide. So if they were like, "We're going to pay you $10 million," you'd
Yeah,
obviously be like, "Well, that's horseshit." You're obviously not going to pay a tour guide that price. So they must have paid him something realistic, like to be a tour guide, but also something convincing enough to get him on the plane. And I don't think that figure exists. Like
absolutely.
I don't think that balance exists.
Yeah, and it's a really the financial resources the Kirby family have. It's revealed that they aren't super rich like they say, but they're still affluent enough to like own a private jet and hire
Yeah,
mercenaries. You know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I mean the one character that actually survives the longest is the one that actually isn't a mercenary. Like the mercenaries are dispatched quite quickly, which I suppose is sort of I suppose that's a metaphor for physical
Yeah.
prowess doesn't mean survival.
Hmm.
But but yeah, like they must, because they were on a parasailing holiday in Costa Rica. They like they have a private jet. They can hire mercenaries, as you said. Like they do seem pretty affluent. And then they're literally like, oh yeah, we conned you into coming to a dinosaur island. I guess we can do up your bathroom or kitchen if you want. Like you definitely have enough money to give him more than that.
Yeah, yeah, I know, man. And one of my favorite scene in the entire Jurassic Park franchise happens in this film, and it's when Alan's having a dream and he looks around and there's a Velociraptor who says, "Alan." I just love that.
I don't I don't remember this. Like I think I just don't pay enough attention whenever I'm taking notes.
So good, man. Honestly, it's just so. It is quite. I don't know if it probably is intentionally funny, but I don't know if it's intentionally iconic. But anyway, um, but yeah, like one thing about this film, I love how intelligent the dinosaurs are. Like I don't know, is it ever revealed why they're so intelligent? Is it?
Well, I guess maybe there were no, the cut that out. But obviously dinosaurs were, the biggest predators of their time because there were no humans that existed. And
Yeah.
even if humans existed simultaneously with dinosaurs, the dinosaurs would obviously trump them in regards to predatory skills. So I suppose, even in their time, they were incredibly intelligent with problem solving, hunting, strategy, the ability to set a trap, which is seen
Yeah.
with the velociraptors here. But I guess there's also the added element of their genetics being spliced with frogs,
Oh
which
yeah, yeah.
live in the modern era and
Mhm.
have learned to be intelligent, in surrounding with modern prey.
It's a great point, man. Yeah, I never actually considered that. That's great, buddy. No matter how intelligent they are, the dinosaurs always seem to respond to "Hey, over here," and then that ends up in their ultimate demise. So that's probably quite a funny little charm of the movie, I suppose.
Yes, and speaking of sort of their genetic creation and how that influences their intelligence, what I also thought was, obviously humans are created, from matter. We're not uh made, from ancient, DNA from millions of years ago in a lab. So if they can splice the DNA of a dinosaur with a frog, and they can, remove an enzyme so that, they can essentially starve them if they want to, which obviously ends up being unsuccessful because they just, amend their diet, and then they're getting a sufficient amount of that enzyme.
Yeah.
But couldn't you genetic like this? Obviously, this is going to sound ignorant, but you have to remember
Yeah,
this
go
is
for it.
science fiction.
Go for it.
So this isn't real science. But surely in this world where you can, genetically engineer dinosaurs, you could genetically engineer them without the need for food. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's a
couldn't you
great
just
point.
remove their stomachs, and like the parts of their body that need fed?
It's a great point. It's a great point. Like, yeah, yeah. I never actually considered that as well because, like, clearly the dinosaurs are like they're definitely intelligent enough to like set traps and stuff. We see that, and if that can happen, you'd imagine that the scientists would find a way to make them more self. I don't know what to like self living. That's not a word, but like, do you know what I mean? Like self sufficient is what I mean.
Yeah. And like, sort of speaking the diet and everything, in the first film, the slimy lawyer, as the film presents him, but I think he seemed all right.
Yeah.
Is there to sort of assess not only the safety but the financial viability of Jurassic Park.
Mhm.
But surely, we see the T-Rex, I believe, being fed, the massive cow,
Yeah.
and like, surely, you're spending an absolute fortune on the diet
Oh
and
yeah, big
upkeep of
time,
the
man.
dinosaurs.
A whole
And then
cow, yeah.
also John Hammond is saying, oh well, I want this to be open to everyone and make the fares insanely cheap. So there's no financial viability to this, to
Yeah.
this park.
One thing
So I mean, I don't think they ever would have made money.
Yeah, one thing about John Hammond, like, where's his money coming from? Because, like, he's definitely operating at a financial loss at Jurassic Park at the minute because he's getting no tourists, and also, like you said perfectly, buddy, it's going to take a lot to feed those animals. Like, a one cow is going to cost at least a couple hundred, I'd imagine, if not more.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably a balance of family money, money made through his business, and then also investors. But investors aren't going to support him. Making fees, sort of making like the park fares like dirt cheap. Like, no one would have ever supported
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know, man. I know.
So there's the revelation given that the Kirby couple are actually a divorced couple searching for their son, and this, is meant as a huge reveal to Alan Grant. And they find Ben's corpse, who is Amanda's boyfriend, and Amanda screams and runs away, and her ex-husband comes to comfort her, and he apologizes and, offers his condolences, and she says it's not about Ben. Maybe it should be,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're still of the firm belief that your son is alive. And she's like, but our
Not
son's
about him.
alone. And I'm like, and your boyfriend's fucking dead. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe take one moment to grieve him. She's
yeah,
like,
I know.
oh, I couldn't give a shit.
One thing about the Kirby's, like, I know the incentive of money is a lot for can be very tempting for anyone, but surely Alan would still go if they said, "Listen, our son's trapped in the island. We need someone to save him." That's more of an incentive than money, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Alan Grant seems like a great moral guy. He doesn't love kids, but he seems to
Yeah,
be insanely, he seems to be insanely moral. So if he's literally the only person that can guide them through the park. But I mean, one person who probably is more experienced, is probably John Hammond. And I think that, if if kids were being hunted by his dinosaurs again, I feel like he probably would have, gotten involved. Like,
yeah,
if people had
absolutely.
appealed to him. And also, they mentioned that, they asked the American embassy to help them, and they sort of said, well, I mean, they basically said your son's dead, move on. So then I'm surprised that, the entire army and navy and air force and shit
For
come in at the
one
end.
person, for one
Yeah,
person.
and I'm like, surely you have like no jurisdiction here. Like, if you're coming into Costa Rica and shooting dinosaurs, like, you're probably committing like an illegal war. Like, has Congress signed off on this?
Yeah,
Like, I doubt it.
yeah. It's like
War against the dinosaurs is probably illegal.
you're invading Costa Rica, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I'm not good at geography, so I don't know whose jurisdiction all that business falls under. But yeah, it seems like congressional approval probably wouldn't have happened because like we see like droves of men like
Yeah,
entering in with huge guns, and I'm like,
tanks.
you know,
Yeah, everything.
I mean, sure, I guess, you know, with the very little information that Alan was able to give Ellie as he was sort of gasping for air under the water, you know, but at most they're fully aware that they're coming to save maybe four people, which is or like, you know, five or six people,
Yeah.
and they bring like the full force of war.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the dinosaurs there are herbivores anyway. So what are they
Yeah,
gonna
I mean,
do?
yeah, it just seemed unnecessary. I guess it was Ellie panicking, but like, you know, it's not like she's a government official. She's a highly respected paleontologist. She's a scientist. I don't think any scientist calling up like what do you even call? Like, do you go, "Hey operator, I'd like the US military." And then you're like, "Hey, you know, like, and you know, whenever
Yeah,
you're like, "Hey, U.S. military," they don't go, "Oh,
yeah,
how many people would you like us to send?" She just goes,
hundreds.
"Send everybody," and they
Yeah,
do. It's like
yeah. She's
that.
just like
I don't understand.
911. Hi, what service do you require? Yep, Navy and the Marines, please. Bye. It's just
Just
ridiculous.
I don't understand, man.
Maybe this isn't a, a good film. I don't know why they.
No, no, it's still good.
No, it is good.
But well, I mean, actually, we'll talk about that after the next point. So you know, this is a huge franchise. As we said, it's famous for dinosaur murders. People are
Yeah.
viciously destroyed by dinosaurs. Humans, human adults. You know, the two films before, you know, show groups of adults being absolutely ravaged, you know, by dinosaurs, and like a
Sure.
couple of them barely come out with their lives after one day. And
Sure.
this film asks us to believe that a child who's described only as resourceful has survived 8 weeks on an island full of dinosaurs.
Yeah, I know. Like 8 weeks, and like, mercenaries have been killed instantly. Like, how's this kid surviving? I get it if he's in the herbivore territory, but at one point he's bound to get lost and get stuck in like the carnivore bit.
No, he's definitely like because you know you know sort of throws his smoke grenades and like you know
Oh yeah, yeah, the rock
and sort of
bunkers. Yeah.
and confuses the raptors. So he's in raptor territory because then we see him enter his bunker like after a 30-second walk. So he's definitely in raptor territory.
Yeah.
So
How's he
yeah, I just don't
surviving?
understand how they think he survived because they also ask us to believe that you know the guy Ben, like Amanda's boyfriend, uh, you know, unclipped Eric, I think it is, from the harness. Eric dropped like 1 foot onto the ground, and then Ben just couldn't get out, so he just stayed there until he died. You know,
Yeah.
because we see his corpse and he's a full skeleton, like it's just a skeleton in a harness. So that
Yeah.
means he never got out of his harness. So after Eric dropped to the ground, like he gave so little of a shit. Like
He
you know
just walked
like
off.
no like well yeah, because you know he managed to find food, like enough food and water to last 8 weeks. You know he had like camouflage, he had smoke grenades, but he can't
Where the
find a
fuck's he
knife
getting
to cut
smoke
the.
grenades?
Yeah, he has smoke grenades. I guess maybe in like one of like
They grow on trees. Just
no, like what's the name of the company again?
InGen.
Yeah, maybe InGen had like you know a facility for dinosaur maintenance, and they had smoke grenades as like a defensive technique. But you can find smoke grenades, but you can't find a fucking knife to get this dude out of his harness before he starves to death.
Yeah. What a bastard.
Yeah, like this kid is so selfish. Like not one person sheds a tear for Ben.
Ben's the unsung hero of this in many ways.
Yeah, and speaking of unsung heroes and some redemptive arcs within this film, the character of Billy, who we haven't spoken about yet,
Love him.
we're introduced to that character, sort of like you know making like once again sort of the Ian Malcolm like weird sexy like you know science seduction where
Yeah.
he's you know like use the toothbrush and then like slowly guides this woman's hand like as though that's you know the art of seduction.
Yeah.
And then eventually we see that you know he has stolen a raptor egg, and that's why the dinosaurs have been after them this entire time. How did you feel in that moment of that revelation?
Oh, that's a good one because I actually quite like Billy. He's one of my favorite characters. He's a very Ian Malcolm esque character. I get those vibes from him. But yeah, to steal dinosaur eggs, it's a bit silly.
But did you know that he had done that? Because I
I know,
immediately knew that he'd done.
I know,
He looked so shifty eyed.
you picked up on it, or you wouldn't have.
Oh, immediately, like whenever they walked away from the raptor eggs, I was like, he stole them.
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose so. But I love the way I think he has a very redemptive arc in the sense that like he saves Eric and stuff on the glider as well. Ironically, sort of
Yeah.
from the pterodactyl esque creatures, and I actually love that scene. I think the sort of the pterodactyl esque creatures reveal from the fog is very chilling. Actually, it makes for a great shot.
Yeah, and I'd sort of made a moral judgment about Billy, that he was going to be, this film obviously presents the dinosaurs somewhat mistakenly as the villains of the film,
Yeah,
because it is all just, it's all corporate, like everything we talk about, like there's
corporate
always a villain, but then
espionage.
we're like, corporate greed is the real villain,
Yeah,
and it's especially apparent in this film,
yeah,
and there is usually one human antagonist, in the first film it's Dennis, in the second film it's Ludlow. And then in this film, arguably the most villainous human character is Billy. But as I said, in the moment, it was the right judgment to make. To say this character is immoral, but then he is probably one of the best redemptive arcs I've ever seen. Because like within 2 minutes of screen time of him trying to redeem himself, he was fully successful.
absolutely, man. And I think he's one of the best characters in the film, to be honest. As well as with Alan. So yeah, man. I don't have anything else more to say, man. Do you have anything?
No, nothing more from me. So I'd love to hear your rating of the film, Matthew.
So we've had a good laugh and giggle at this film and some of the plot points that don't necessarily make sense. I think it definitely does miss Ian Malcolm, but I think for bringing Alan Grant back and stuff, I thought it was fantastic, and I love the Spinosaurus sort of villainy there. I think that the effects best have ever been CGI, amazing. So I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Man, what would you give it?
Yeah, so I would probably agree with you. I think there are some laugh out loud sort of non-intentional moments where you're sort of like, really? Like they
Yeah,
called in the entire military.
yeah,
There are some. It's probably the dumbest film in the trilogy, but it's also probably one of the funniest, and it has, as I said, one of the best redemptive arcs I've seen. And I have to give it full credit for finally bringing Sam Neill back. But yeah, it misses the mark in not completing the Trinity. Once again, it makes the same mistake as The Lost World. Yeah, I agree with everything you said about its improvements in effects and obviously the consistency in the music and stuff. So I would say this film is probably on par with the sequel. So I'm probably going to give it an 8 out of 10.
awesome, buddy, and that's fantastic, and it's one of those films. I think you can tell it's not directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot that this was directed by Joe Johnston, who directed Captain
Captain
America: The
America,
First
yeah, yeah.
Avenger.
Oh, cool, cool, yeah.
Like, did you think it had any similar vibes to that? Because I did not.
Not really, buddy. To be honest, like maybe maybe when like Billy's about to save Eric in the paraglider, that was the music swells and it's sort of a Captain America esque scene. But apart from that, nothing really. To be honest, it's very different tonally. To be honest, from the first Avenger.
Yeah, I don't think Joe Johnson has made some great films, but I don't think he doesn't have like a unique visual style. Like you don't go, that's a Joe Johnson
Yeah,
film,
exactly,
where
exactly.
you go like, that's a Coen Brothers film or that's a Wachowski film. He lacks a definitive style. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you could tell you could tell it was the most disjointed from the original.
Yeah, man, completely. And I suppose that leaves us to move on to our concluding segment about the future episodes we have in store for the viewers. Then, yeah, buddy.
Yes. So, in continuing with our Disney animated film franchise saga, we will be talking about a further four films from the filmography of Walt Disney Animation Studios. And the ones I'm aware of are Bambi, Saludos Amigos, The Three Caballeros, and Make Mine Music. I
Oh,
believe are the four films that we're talking about. So
awesome.
three out of four of those are like Fantasia, music influenced, segment films, and that sounds fucking grim. Gonna be honest.
I haven't seen Bambi though, so I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I haven't seen Bambi either. It is the one that I'm looking forward to, and then the other three I'm kind of dreading.
Yeah, but that should be recorded pretty soon for you guys, and then after that we'll definitely have another themed episode for you guys, whatever that may be. But yeah, I've had a great time recording with you today, Callum. It's good to check another big franchise off our bucket list.
Yes, definitely. I was wondering if we could step away slightly from the thematic episode next for the episode after Disney, because I kind of desperately want to watch the Jurassic World movies now,
Okay,
and
no worries.
there are a lot of new releases coming out soon. So I thought, if we covered the two Jurassic World films, that would give us room to also maybe do a mini review of a new release.
Absolutely, man. That'll be great. That'll be great. So yeah, that sounds great. So that'll be Jurassic World and Dominion. Then yeah.
Uh, Fallen Kingdom,
Fallen Kingdom. Yeah, I was getting confused between those two
which
titles.
has now been added to Netflix, so we will
Oh,
be able to
awesome.
watch those comfortably from our homes.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, it's been great recording you today, buddy. I thought you made some fantastic points, and thank you to everyone who has subscribed, like, commented, shared, all that good stuff. And yeah, be sure to comment your thoughts on these films in the comment section down below, and email us with any questions or podcast suggestions at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, catch you later, Callum, and take care, everyone, and bye bye.
Bye bye.